Welcome, everybody, to the Healthy Leader Expert Forum. This is a place where we get honest about what leadership takes, both self leadership and leadership of others. And of course, we always start with ourselves. And what that means for each one of us is very different. So we believe that there is not one single formula for being healthy and that there is not one single formula for being a leader. So, our mission at the Healthy Leader Group is to help you uncover your version of healthy leadership. Again, both self leadership and leadership of others. And so, we use evidence based practices, we use tools and frameworks, and we also have lively conversations with experts like our guest today who can help us kind of cut through the noise and really zero in on what you can do right now, today, to show up and to lead your best life. And my guest today has built an entire body of work around exactly that idea, starting with who you are and understanding that before you can effectively lead anyone else. And he has an incredible process to truly define who you are so that you can move from insecurity, from self doubt, from feeling like you don't belong or constantly needing to prove yourself to identity, meaning leading from your strengths and showing up as yourself regardless of what's happening around you. And he has this delightful title called Pick Me. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Rodney Agan. He is a leadership consultant, an executive coach, the creator. He created the personality imprint, and that's the framework that helps leaders and organizations with three key things. He talks about alignment, confidence, and contribution. He is also the founder of the Connexus Group, the author of Pick Me From Insecurity to Identity. And so, Rodney, welcome. I'm so glad that you are here.
Thank you, Tracy. So good to be here. And you're just you kind of light up when I'm in the room with you, and so that helps me as well. So I just love your personality, and obviously you know you're effective, but your personality just adds to that. So thanks for
Oh,
having me on today.
thank you. Thank you. Well, it's easy for me to light up in the room with you. Rodney and I have been friends for a very long time. And before we dive into this amazing book, I was just talking to Rodney about this offline. Can you just share with our audience a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, and then what brought this book to life for you?
Yeah, well, I'm known by a lot of different things, but one of my joys is I'm known as Pop to four awesome grandchildren, two in Colorado, two in Florida, and just flew in yesterday from being with two of them, and we'll be headed to Colorado next week to be with the other two. So I enjoy part of my life now is I can work from most anywhere, and I love that. So I have a PhD in communicative leadership. Been working with organizations, nonprofits for over 30 years, passionate about it. In 2013, formed Connexus Group and really began to dive deeper into the executive coaching consulting world. And then from there, was able to just keep developing a lot of the content and processes. And I'm an entrepreneur and I love to think and I love to create. And so then I quickly realized that I'm going to have to get a team around me that knows how to bridle me, knows when to say no or slow down or speed up, and then make the dream come true. So, personality imprint really began in my heart and my mind in the mid 2005, 6 range. So it's been a good while back. Part of my PhD project was that much of my study. And then from there, spent a considerable investment into bringing all of this online with dashboards and all of the things that we can scale it with teams. And I
Mhm.
began to work on this book, Pick Me, about 10 years ago. And I would do a little bit, put it down, add a little bit, put it down. And finally, some of my team was like, you've got all this content, and I'm speaking at events, keynote stuff. And first thing that's asked is, do you have a book? And I was like, I've got a lot of it up here, but not here. So that's how Pick Me came to play. And we can talk whatever questions you have, but that's kind of leading up to where we are today.
Well, before we move on, just even the way that you answered that question, the first thing that you said is, I'm pop, right? That's who I
Yeah.
am. And it's really interesting. It kind of gives me chills a little bit because that's your identity, first and foremost.
Yes.
And then you express that, dare I say, love out even in a professional way. But first and foremost, you have this love for your family and know exactly where your identity starts. Um, so you kind of explained just a little bit about the moment when you knew that you finally had to take all of the notes and everything and say, okay, I need to have this book written. Was there a specific time when you said, okay, I got to get this done?
Probably about 6 months ago, just working with my team and then working with some clients, they began to really ask some questions. Where can I get this? What do I do? How can I bring this to my team? And while we had the assessment, the personality imprint and those things, it really wasn't the content and they wanted something. And so, as I mentioned to you, we're about to come out with the workbook for this as well. So I needed
Mhm.
the book first, and then the workbook, so teams can begin to implement this, where they are. So about 6 months ago, I just started getting questions and so forth, and I was like, okay, I've got to do this.
Right. The thing that struck me is I've been through your program, fabulous program, is that it's a lot of information and then you do
Yeah.
distill it very, very well. But this book really distills it and makes it, it's almost like a reference book as well as just a good read additionally. So for me, it feels like great timing.
I want to say this as well, and this is intentional. Not that I'm smart or ever the smartest person in any room, but I wanted this to be written at a level that anybody without a leadership degree or experience can read this and not only identify but know how to apply it. So it's written at that level on purpose.
Yeah. And okay, so before we get into that particular, specifically the first half of the book, there are so many of different ways that you could have themed this idea of getting to know yourself and in those three realms that we're going to talk about. What made you go with the fence line and this idea of pick me? Where'd that come from?
Well, I'm sure, I'm not trying to say male versus female or whatever. I don't know your experience when you were young, but I know as a young boy, I can remember standing on that fence line and just being okay, I'm ready to be picked. And nobody, everybody says I may not be the first or second person picked, but I certainly don't want to be the last.
Right.
And I guess just some of those experiences one day when I was reflecting on a lot of this on personality, and to go back to it, I think kind of what brought it really into play was we're developing the same personality imprint for children now. That's going to come out before long. That a parent can identify the personality of their child to help them set them on a right path, even from rearing them or whatever. So as I begin to look at my grandchildren now, thinking, I wish I would have known these things when I raised my children. When I looked at my four grandchildren, I went back to the fence in my mind. So that's kind of what brought that together.
And you went back to the fence in what way? Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, just to be standing there as a, 8 or 10-year-old boy, and it's not just about playing the sport. It's about not being the last one picked because now there's a stigma,
Right.
and you feel like nobody wants me. Nobody, you want to be, and I almost named the book How to Become Pickable. But after discussing it, it was like people may not understand the
Well,
term,
I
what
don't
you mean.
understand that. Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, so how to be a person that everyone wants to pick.
The pickle?
There's always on the fence when everybody goes there, there's these coaches or the team leaders, and there's always this, if it's baseball, there's this, two, three people that they're the best out there, and I got to hurry up and pick them first.
Right, right.
So what makes them pickable or the one that is picked first or the desire to be picked? I proved my point. You didn't know what
No,
it
I
meant.
did.
But to me, I don't even know that it's a word, but it was to me. So anyway, my focus
Right.
group said no, not pickable. Go with pick me.
Yes, choice. Good choice. And here's something else that was interesting that came to me personally is I totally know what you were talking about when you said male versus female. For sure, that was my experience. But I also was very tall and athletic in my
Uh-huh.
younger days. And I went back to elementary school and to the fence that I stood on there for dodgeball. And I
Yeah.
remember that it was not
Yeah.
an issue for me because I was tall, I was pretty athletic, and I knew that I was not going to get picked last. But
Mm.
then fast forward to being in high school and playing soccer on
Yeah.
the high school field and looking up and looking at the different recruiters, I was a different player because I wasn't now
Mm.
just focused on the soccer ball. I was like worried about, I was insecure. Totally different experience. I distinctly remember.
Yeah, and even like, a coach in sports would say, you're an all-star and maybe you've made the all-stars, but then when you get to the all-star game, everybody's an all-star. Now you're average or below or whatever. You're not the top. And how do you respond to that? And in a career, as you grow in your career, you're going to face those things. There's always a lid that if you're not hitting a lid, you're not growing. So what are you going to do to get through that lid to the next level? But once you get through that level, there will be another lid. So part of this book is designed to help you think about the lid coming. How do you, go through that and then prepare yourself for the next to always be ready to be picked.
Right. And I'm going to jump right into this because I think this is a nice little segue. Is that really what you're talking about is your identity, regardless of who chooses you, regardless of the results, like truly knowing who you are. And so I know that you have a process that you use to help people do that, but is there something a little bit more foundational underneath that for you personally, even before you take a personality imprint in terms of knowing who you are?
Well, there's the old saying, you need to be comfortable in your skin.
Hmm.
And I think, I can remember when I was a young boy, this goes back to seventh grade. My parents put me in a private school for the first time, and this is a new environment. And about 3 months in, I get called to the administrator's office, and it's a pretty large private school. And I'm just a seventh grade voice is still changing. I'm just this lanky kid. Like, what do they want? What did I do wrong? And I get there, and when I walk in, they have this room, and there were like 12, 15 people there, boys and girls, all the way up to senior high school from middle school. And they said, your name was turned in, has been identified. We're forming a leadership council for the school, and your name was given to represent your grade. And I don't never forget this. I sat there and thought, I'm a leader. Not sure what it was, what it meant, but I'm a leader. And then last week with my little 4-year-old grandson, there was this little song he's learned somewhere in school somewhere, and he was walking through the house singing, "I am a leader, I am a," and I was like, wow. Can I not help him develop this at 4 and 5 years old? Would be better than waiting till seventh grade. So,
Right. Well, it sounds like you already have been helping him develop that.
well, I'm hoping anyway. We'll see.
Yeah. So one more question about insecurity because I think it's really in alignment with the work that I do. And very often I think that we think or we classify insecurity as somebody who's just kind of walking around and being very meek and they don't know what to do. But really with a lot of the leaders that I'm sure that you work with and that I work with, they are high level. They do not look like they're
Yeah.
insecure.
No.
It could be, overthinking or second guessing or like replaying conversations or catastrophizing. So what other ways have you seen insecurity in the leaders that you work with?
Well, and the term we use a lot is the imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
And people, it's kind of like, okay, I've got here, but how did I get here? And do I deserve to be here? And does anybody else think I should be here on my team? And all of those kinds of things. And I'm a firm believer that imposter syndrome is probably part of the human process. At the same time, it is really just a lid that you're allowing to be placed on top of you. It does not have to be there. And so this is where you got to put on your big boy pants and say, okay, are there skills that I need to develop and work on? Are there and we may talk about this later, blind spots that I need to address? Are there some things that, as a result of my insecurity, I have allowed it to become a lid?
Right. I've chosen it.
I have chosen it. Just because it's given to you does not mean you have to accept it.
Oh, that's a good line right there.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm going to do a quick little aside. I just got back yesterday from celebrating 50 years of women at West Point.
Wow.
Yes. And one of the,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Thanks
And
for serving and all the stuff you've done as well. You have a tremendous resume.
well, I tell you what, being with these women, one of the panels, they had the first black first captain, a male, and the first captain is the one who's in charge of the entire Corps of Cadets. And
Yeah.
then they had the first female first captain, who I actually played soccer with in 1990. And then there were about five more, all the way about to 2023, of this panel of women and one man. And it was very interesting. I had your book in my backpack, and it's interesting because the first one had been picked as a female, but she sure as heck did not feel like she belonged.
Yeah.
And then the one for 2023, one of the statements that she made was she was picked, and she said, you know, I hate to burst everybody's bubble here, but there was not one moment, this chokes me up, there's not one moment that I was the first captain that I did not feel like I belonged here.
Wow. What a transgression. Just a
Yeah.
transpiring to now from I'll break through the lid and then I'll open it up so that she can accept and carry and that's just awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it made me think of, I'm sure there were women in the class of 2023 who perhaps didn't feel like they belonged because they chose, perhaps, and I don't know what everybody's
Yeah.
environment was like, but so it's interesting. I was thinking about how both of those environments, both the internal and the external, we don't have any control over the external, do have an influence, but the most powerful one, I believe, and I think you do too, you have a whole chapter on it, is your own lid and your own choice.
And I would even say, had I been there, the fact that you even got accepted and you're in West Point means you belong. Why would you not think that you can bust through a lid? But
Well,
but it's something you put on yourself and you accept.
100%. And there were plenty of women. Here's something else that was interesting. There were plenty of people in that audience as they were looking at the women with ranger tabs and the other women who were commanding infantry battalions and other women doing all these great things and authors and doing all these great things. And a couple of women who were grads, right, are kind of slinking down in their seats, feeling like they did not belong,
Mhm.
choosing their own lid. And I was like, don't you do that. You
Right.
belong here.
Yes.
So I think that's a great segue into your process and how you said at the very beginning, you've got a lot of all of these ideas and how do I organize them? So tell us a little bit about how you have organized this and the imprint personality, just kind of a high level overview.
Yeah, well, your imprint is more than just your personality. We have a lot of people come to us and say, "Can you work on a personality identification for our team?"
Hmm.
We believe that your imprint, your DNA, if you will, is what competencies do you have? That's how you work. So if you're an administrator, I don't care if you work in a warehouse, if you're in the service, if you're in a bank, if you're in a restaurant, it doesn't matter. If you are an administrator, which is an organizer of people,
Yeah.
you're going to organize people. I don't care where you are. You can't help it.
Right.
So my son, when he was playing baseball in about, I don't know, fifth, sixth grade, I noticed when he was playing shortstop and the coach went out, stopped the game, went out there and talked to him, got on a knee and talked to him, did that twice in two different innings. And so after the game was over, we're going home. And I didn't want to, I'm always pro coach. I'm not going to down the coach. But I was like, so Nathan, tell me, what was the coach talking to you about? I'm curious. He
Right.
said, Dad, the left fielder and the center fielder, they kept being out of place. They were not where they were supposed to be, and I was telling them where to go. And the coach came out there and told me, "You're not the coach. You're the shortstop. You let me coach them." And I often think about that, like from administrator or whatever. You can't help it. So the competency is how you work. The personality is how you think and how you approach your work.
Hmm.
And then the learning style really ties them all together to really learn how do I learn how to work correctly in the best way. So our imprint, we call it,
Hmm.
personality imprint is to combine those so I get a good holistic view of who you are.
Hmm. And when someone has that and they understand who they are, just starting with the individual before we go to the team, what are some of the benefits of that when people really understand their own imprint?
Well, it kind of goes back to what we just talked about. Now I can feel comfortable in my own skin. I can understand. And one of the things I love to say here is I can feel comfortable saying no to some things now
Hmm.
because I'm not the best person for that.
That's a
And I
good.
can explain it even if let's say I'm in middle management or I have someone above me and they want me to do something. I can say to them in a respectful way, I'm glad to be a team player. I'm going to help in every way I can, but I'm going to tell you if you really want me to, I could team up with Traci because Traci is like the superstar there, and we can make that happen. If you're good with that, why don't we let her lead and I'll support in this particular thing or whatever.
Mhm.
So it just helps you to feel better about the way you approach things. You're going to be more energized. That a lot of times we say like from the strongest to the weakest, and that we use that. I don't particularly care for those terms as much. I think
Right.
it's better to say I'm more motivated here and I'm less or least motivated here. It's not that I can't do these things, but man, if I do them every day, I'm just going to not come into work.
Right. And you mentioned the word energy in terms of being energized by that. So
Yeah.
would you say that all three of those key areas, the way that you think, the way that you work, and the way that you learn, and I know you said it a little bit differently, that all three of those are different energy levers?
Well, certainly. So let's say even your learning style, which people often just totally overlook. If, I say to someone who's a public speaker and I enjoy doing keynote, I'm in my passion when I'm on a stage and getting to talk. Okay.
Mhm.
So when I'm promoting, or if I'm speaking, the audible people are hearing me. And honest to goodness, they're watching every word. Even if they're looking at the screen, they're watching your lips to understand every word you're saying. Your
Mhm.
read write people obviously are looking at it and they're taking notes. Your kinesthetic people, which I'll come back to, they need to do something, but your visual learners are obviously watching the screens or whatever's going on.
Mhm.
They're not writing anything down. They're playing tic-tac-toe, if anything, on their page. So they're not writing, but they're visually getting it. But
Right.
I often hear, well, how do I help someone who's kinesthetic if I'm speaking? And it's very simple. You just do something similar to, hey, notice this word on the screen here. It says blank. Well, that makes your kinesthetic people say, he told me to do something.
Right. It's a tool.
Or take your hand and do this or whatever.
Right.
So, as a visual learner, I love to listen to podcasts or books, when I'm driving.
Mhm.
And if I hear an aha moment, it just, man, that was so good. Later on, I can repeat that moment and I'll say, I was on I-75 getting off exit whatever, because it visually pinned it in my mind.
I have never made that connection.
Yeah.
I do the exact same
Yeah.
thing. I thought that I was more kinesthetic and read write because I'm writing as I'm taking things in as you're talking, I'm writing them, but I also have that. So clearly there's a combination.
Yeah, there is. You got some of all of it, but one is the one that's just so natural. It just works without you even trying. It's like in the running the system in the back of your mind.
Yeah. So that's for the individual. So it almost seems obvious, but I would like for you to to share with us. And then what does it do for teams? We know individually now how it's beneficial. What about for teams?
Oh, we talking about imprint or learning style in
Yeah.
particular?
Well, just
Imprint.
let's talk about the imprint.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when you take the imprint and we use when we do something in person, and I know you saw some of this with us, but we'll
Right.
even take a big map on the floor and it looks kind of like we're playing Twister, whatever, but we get everybody to go stand on wherever you assessed here, go stand there. And I can't even tell you how many different responses I've had. And I've done this in various countries and then
Mhm.
all across the US that when they stand there, one of the first responses I hear consistently is, now I know why our team is struggling. And they'll say something like, Traci, why do I have you doing X when evidently Y is what motivates you?
Mhm.
And then I'll also say, go to your weakest or your least motivated competency, go stand there.
Mm.
And then I'll ask, If you had to come into work and do that every day, if that was your job description, what would you do? Most of them said, I'd quit. I'd
Right.
leave. And then I also would say, this is what your team looks like in stress mode. So to me, when I'm looking at the imprint, I'm saying, and unfortunately, as a leader, and I've done this with my own team, I set them up for a failure and wonder and get upset if they're not succeeding.
Hmm.
So
And what do you do afterwards when people are like, wow, I am in the wrong space, or I've been asked to, for, I'm in the wrong role, or have the wrong responsibilities? What generally happens? I mean,
yeah, so obviously the word we can just stop doing something if possible, like delete something, because why are you doing that task? We can delegate it. I mean, that's everybody knows about delegation. But also you can kind of downsize some things. So let's say that you're over a financial department, for instance, and you
Mhm.
got people working for you, and you're really a higher level leader, and you're not comfortable with the weeds. You don't want to be in there doing all of the calculating and the reporting and all of that, but you do need to know it and you need to sign off on it or whatever. So
Right.
what I would say is let's figure out who does enjoy that. And instead of spending 10 hours a month doing it, let's let them handle 4, 5, 6, 8 hours. You just spend 2 hours reviewing it and okaying it.
Yeah.
So I've automatically set up the team because that person that enjoys that does not enjoy the leadership side of it.
Hmm.
Just let me do this administrative work and get this ready for you, and I'll make all of us look good.
And do you help people with that afterwards in terms of they've okay, here is why it's not working. Okay, now what do we do? You help them figure that out.
100%. I
Yeah.
just got through working, and I won't say the name but one
Yeah.
of the most well-known hospital systems in Georgia, I just finished coaching 12 of their surgeons for a full year, and they're the board of the hospital. And that they are, if I could take 1 second, I'll tell you, I was told right up front, we've hired two consultants for them, and they fired both of them in the second month.
Hmm.
And you got to come in there and be the alpha in the room quickly, or you'll be fired. And so I thought about that. I walk in a room, I got 12 white coats and me. And this is how I started it. I just said, you guys are obviously have been the smartest people in whatever room you walked into, probably most of your life. You're
Hmm.
used to it. And I said, that really hasn't changed today. And I waited about 3 seconds, quiet. And I said, when it comes to medicine or surgery, but when it comes to leadership and culture, I've got all of you beaten.
I love it.
And I just waited, and it was dead silence for about 2 or 3 seconds. Then they all started laughing, and I knew, okay, I got them. And I stayed with them for a year. So then I'm coaching at the same time. There's C-suite, the CEO, CFO, main leaders in different meetings to answer your question, to help them understand better how to align each of their teams to work for greater success.
Hmm.
And so that's what we do all the time is yes, my actual joy is after we get this started is to be able to get in there and go, okay, let's help you rework this and fix that and all that. That's where I get pumped about. So
Yeah, that is super, super exciting to be able to help people on the ground actually use this, which I think a lot of
yeah,
assessments get put in a drawer and kind of put away after a while, but this is something that
yes,
people can use. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's just a tool.
it's just a tool. I love that. Very, yes. So explain, unpack that a little bit for our audience. It's just a tool.
So while there are various tools out there, obviously,
Mhm.
and I've asked, I can't even tell you how many people when I'll say, have you guys assessed your team? And they go, yes. And they tell me what. And I say, then, so what have you done with it? How have you applied it? And I get the deer in the headlights look. They don't know.
Mhm.
So what we have done, and I'm not trying to be self-serving in this, but I think what we've done is developed a process that we know where we're trying to take you and we can take this tool and begin to turn the right levers with everybody on the team. And without the tool, I don't know how to do that.
Right.
And quite honestly, even if you're the leader of the team without the tool, you may not even know how to do that because we assume people show up at work and
Mhm.
they want you to think they're good at everything and
Right.
succeed.
Right.
And oftentimes you don't know the back end of really how they're wired, and you're just setting them up for failure over and over and over.
Right. Well, let's pop into chapter 8. I have all sorts of notes in
Okay.
here. There's this one great quote where you talk about chapter 8 is about pressure, blind spots, and breakthroughs. And you say, blind spots are not moral failures, they are behaviors you don't fully see or understand in yourself.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, one of the other, I think, quotes in there, right there around that part of the book is your blind spot is always your strength pushed too far under pressure.
That's right. It's right underneath it. Yep.
So your blind spot, oftentimes we think that it's something so big we can't, like I have failed because I have a blind spot.
Right.
It's really more of you're doing something that you're not supposed to so long, you become numb to it, is another way you could say it.
Hmm.
Uh, I remember one time I was many years ago, and I went to a camp all week with a bunch of middle schoolers, okay, as a chaperone.
Hmm.
Did it one time. I don't do that one again. So I didn't sleep for 8 days, whatever it was. You can't sleep. And I was driving home by myself. I had to leave a day early. And I remember on a 2-lane road, I was driving home. I had about a 2 hour drive, and I'm on this 2-lane road. And all of a sudden I hear horns and everybody's blowing. And I look up in the rearview mirror and I had been asleep. I went to sleep driving, and I'm doing like 10 miles an hour. And I stayed on the road. And there was a line of cars behind me back in there. And I'm just like, thank you, God, I didn't wreck, I didn't hit somebody or hurt somebody. And I thought some of that was, um, I guess, knew subconsciously I was on this straight road, and I
Hmm.
just let my guard down and I went to sleep. And I think as a leader, we can do that as well. We become blind, numb because we've done something so long, we don't even realize we're not doing it effectively. I was still on the road, but I was doing 10 miles an hour,
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
60.
Hmm.
Plus, I was hindering everybody else behind me.
Great analogy. And I'm glad nothing happened. That's really
Yes, thank you.
good.
Me too.
So link that to push too far under pressure. So basically too far, I didn't get enough sleep. And then finally I
Yeah.
just,
You start crashing. So in that chapter, I deal with we use a lot with the disc. So dominant, inspiring,
mhm,
supportive, cautious. So in that chapter, and I'm looking over here, I got some notes so I don't miss it. So a high D, if you're a D under pressure, blind spot,
mhm.
you can make push confidence into dominance or control.
Right. We see that. Right. That's clear.
Yeah.
That's clear.
Uh,
Yeah.
an I can push enthusiasm to impulsiveness or distraction. An S can push harmony into avoidance or over accommodating people. A
Hmm.
C can push accuracy into perfectionism and criticism. And we think, well, I'm a cautious, I'm just being, but what we're doing is we're doing it under pressure in the wrong way. We're applying it.
That is really, really powerful. It
Yeah.
reminds me a little bit of Gallup's strengths, and you can take a strength and
Mhm. Yeah.
it can become something in the basement, right? If you've taken it too far. This is a lot clearer, like just very, very clear. So you talked about the three internal stages that you move through when this happens. And so will you go over those? Because I like to do things in threes, but I thought that this was really clever. The three stages that we go through when we're under that pressure.
So we start with tension,
Hmm.
and then when you get under tension, it starts triggering the wrong things. You start reacting the wrong way.
Hmm.
But then that third one is, I call it tilt.
Yeah.
And so tilt is where your behavior becomes exaggerated and you're in survival mode, not strength mode.
Right.
Now, one thing to go back to a statement I made earlier, and it applies here with a team. When you put a team under pressure so long, here's
Mm-hmm.
what happens. And this is one of those, I think, drop the mic thoughts here. When you can put a team or yourself under it so long, you think it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
And to get out of it is going to take a major change. And so you don't want to be in stress or behind a blind spot so long that you think it's you. Now that's where go back to self, believing things about yourself and imposter syndrome and all those things work together because you have allowed yourself to get into a rut that you're going to have to do something more to get out of. And if I could make a quick analogy, if you have a teenager and you're going to teach them to drive, my children are a lot older now, but one of the first things you tell them is if you run off the road, don't try to get back on. Just let your foot off of the gas and just slow down. Don't slam the brakes on. If possible, unless you're about to hit something, just slow down. When you get to a almost stop or a very slow speed, come back up on the road. What I saw one day was that the statistics said in teen drivers, one of the biggest crashes was overcorrecting. They run off the road and they quickly overcorrect. And what they do, and here's the key thought, they miss this ditch and hit that one instead.
Right.
So I think in here in your blind spots, it can be the same thing. Trying so hard not to do something, we wind up doing something worse,
Hmm.
or trying so hard to do something that we're not supposed to be or aligned to be. We do the wrong thing and it's worse.
So what does that look like in terms of leadership? Do you have an example of that when somebody overcorrects?
Yeah, I had a guy that worked for me, one of the hardest working, most loyal guy. I mean, just phenomenal. Worked with me probably 10 or 11 years. But he was so nice. And when he tried to go and correct or change things on the team, everybody, all he almost oversold it, and then everybody got mad at him. They loved him until he tried to do that. And I've always thought about him when I think about this. If he would have just gone in his own personality and just dealt with it, they would
Hmm.
have followed him to the end of the world. But when
Hmm.
he tried to be the mean bad guy who he is not, it came across as, his attitude. He's got an attitude and he's whatever. So I think you can push anything into the wrong way and then it becomes bad.
Well, it's interesting because you're talking about what the bell that goes off in my mind is this idea of being authentic, um,
Hmm.
being aware of your blind spot and saying, okay, so then how do I, based off of who I am, my imprint, my DNA, how do I then manage that versus just going right to the opposite? Okay, then I need to
Yeah.
be more of that. And I think that we do that. I can't think of a great example off the top of my head, but well, here's an example where you go from, I'm not saying anything about this problem. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything to, why are
Yeah.
you doing that?
That's 100%. You got it. That's right.
Yeah, I don't know why that example popped into my head.
It could have been dealt with in an email. Instead, now it's become a company-wide policy because you waited too long
Yes.
or a
And I,
situation.
right, right, right. Beautiful. And I think that this is a great segue into something that I have heard about before, and you speak about in the book also, that I think is worth repeating, is this idea of the golden versus the platinum rule. And you speak about that as well. So I think this is somewhat tied to that.
Yeah, and obviously I just changed the wording a little bit, and I call it the platinum playground because we're talking about the playground.
Mhm.
And while the golden rule, treating others the way you want to be treated, is there's nothing bad. I mean, that's a good thing to say or to do. But it really breaks down when you start getting into a team dynamic because every one of them have a different way they need to be treated. And so platinum would be the level above gold. And so platinum just simply says, I want to treat you the way you need to be treated or you're wired to be treated. And if I can do that, you're going to pop up to the best you that there is. And so if everybody's on a playground doing that, and I'm not forcing you to be something you're not.
Right.
So, if I went to the same fence line and instead of playing baseball, we're going to pick a football team.
Hmm.
I'm not going to take the guy who weighs 275 pounds and say, you're the new running back or the wide receiver. Because he runs, and no offense to that person, he runs 4 miles an hour where the other guy is going to be able to do 10.
Right, right.
But when it comes to I'm going to get my head knocked off when this defensive guy comes in,
Yeah,
I 100% need you right here.
right.
So learning how to place, and I know that's a little extreme, but learning how, from a personality and competency standpoint, you should look at your team the same way. It's not an offense to put somebody where their strength is.
Double red underline that, right? It's not an offense to put somebody where their strength is. And I like, what did you say earlier? You don't want to say strength and weakness, but where they have, you said motivation.
Yeah, how they're most motivated and least motivated.
Yeah, and which will create the most momentum going along with your analogy, right? What will
Yeah,
create the win for your team? That's super,
yeah.
super valuable. It's interesting when I read that. I'm seeing if I can find this. I like double underlined. I it was treat others the way that they wanted to be treated, and then it says you succeed by treating them in a way that matches their wiring. And then there was another line in here, I can't find it, Rodney, but basically, this is what the learning, I learned this lesson, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago. And then I wish I could find the quote in here, but you basically say something like, when you shift how you're being in this platinum rule, it doesn't mean that you're not being authentic or you aren't being yourself, which you just referenced. It just means that you're really aware of those other people and how can you align yourself with them instead of
Yeah.
changing who you are.
Yeah, and I think I even put in there two or three little things. It requires curiosity
Yes.
So you're seeking the wiring behind the behavior. It requires humility, which it's accepting the style, uh, that it's not just a default. Everybody has their own wiring. There's not one for everybody. And then adaptability, learning how to shift your approach away from what you are, not is to who they are. And we typically do. We love to hire people that like us best or align with us best, but they may not be the best person for the role. And so learning how to help them be the best means diversity.
Yes. And for me personally, the way that I'm even looking at a pair of, those silly sunglasses that are huge that you
Yeah,
can put on. A girlfriend of mine have pairs of these because we're like, listen, we're bright, we're out there. If you can't handle it, then here's some sunglasses
that's
for you to
right.
put on. And so the learning for me was like, hey, that's could be a little too much for some people. You can you can turn it down a little bit, Tracy. And it doesn't mean that you aren't being your truth or you aren't being authentic. It just means
That's
that
right.
you are following the platinum rule, which is
Yeah,
really powerful and who I want to be anyway.
yeah, that's
So,
right.
yeah, that's powerful. I can't believe we're almost to the end. Listen, I want to ask you, you know that my very favorite chapter was the one on self-leadership, chapter 13, leading myself first. And
Mhm.
there is a great quote in here. You say, without self-leadership, all of this quickly becomes overwhelming. With self-leadership, you can remain grounded even when your environment is not, which is what made me think of these West Point first
Mhm.
captains. So, will you talk to me about self leadership and what that means and the layers of it and what that means to you and to your work?
Self-leadership, oftentimes people are placed in roles, or you may not be the top person. So you may be in the mix, and yet you're thinking, I'm being overlooked, I'm being put down, whatever. And I worked with a large company, 125,000 people, and we had nine executive vice presidents, each one in their own vertical. And there was one that was just phenomenal in his culture, and the other ones were just kind of working in their culture. And what we identified was the other seven or eight, they were really jealous. They're like, why do we keep losing our best people wanting to go transfer over to his department? And it was because he has created a self-leadership, a culture that he's leading himself well, and
Mhm.
then the people around him feel led well. There's that platinum play. He played in a platinum playground. And as he led himself in his own skin, and he allowed, and this is key, he allowed them to do that as well. Everybody felt valued, the culture was good, and it just started changing the whole thing. So I always like to say, you're kind of the bullseye. If you can learn to lead what's in that little circle right here well, it will automatically begin to just ripple effect out. But if you're not leading here, let me tell you, you can be in the best culture there is, and you'll be the first one that's going to wind up being gone or so dissatisfied.
Yeah, it's interesting because we do. I like that you said the bullseye. We talk about self leadership and
Hmm.
leadership in a private capacity, and we talk mental, emotional, physical, and then personal, and then professional. And so we ask everybody to create an identity, a vision for who they are in those three
Yeah.
core relationship areas, which is really similar to what you were talking about. You talk about three layers of self leadership, and honestly, this is my very favorite part of the book.
No. Well, I
And
don't have the whole book in front of me, so you'll have to help me. So I don't have it all
right,
memorized,
right.
unfortunately.
I'll totally lead you on this because it totally aligns with the work that I do as well. So,
Good,
yes.
good.
So, you say self leadership involves three layers: awareness, knowing your wiring.
Mhm.
So, your natural pace, your strengths, your blind spots. For me, that I call that mental, like really cognitive
Yeah.
awareness, really understanding yourself. Is that how do you describe that part?
Oh, I think you're dead on. You're bullseye.
Okay. All right, I'll take it. Yes. Okay, so that's one. That's your first layer of self-leadership. Then the
Yeah.
second one, I'm actually going to go to the third one. The
Okay.
third one is adjustment. To lead yourself, drum roll, before you respond. And then right underneath this, it says, this is emotional intelligence in action.
Yes. Yes. When you can learn how to regulate yourself, even under the most pressure, you will respond in a way that people will receive it. But if you don't learn how to do that, again, it goes back to the guy before. You're trying to be mean. You're
Right.
trying to be, but you're coming across the wrong way. So
Yes.
that emotional intelligence, if you can deal with that and learn that first, it just makes the whole layers open up as you go.
Exactly. So for us, when we talk about self-leadership and the three core capacities, we talk about mental, emotional, and physical. So we've hit mental, which is the first one, your cognitive awareness, and then emotional. And I love that you specifically use the word respond because there's a difference between reaction, if we're feeling
Right.
insecure, if we're not getting picked first,
Yeah, that's right.
thinking it through, where are my strengths? Why do I not belong there? All the things that you were talking about. To me, there's a whole chapter in my book about the power of the pause and the ability to do
There you
that.
go.
That is not a minor skill.
No, no.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I think the more executive you get up or the higher you get up, you're going to have to learn. Maybe if I can say it this way, your response time is going to be less. So therefore, you better understand better on your emotional intelligence down here because you can respond quicker.
Right.
And you don't have, if you're flying an airplane, 1/10 of a degree off is massive when you're flying 500 miles.
Right. Right.
So you don't have room for error. And the higher you get up, those are the decisions. And if you haven't dealt with it down here, you're going to have a major crash up here.
Yes. And I think that that is one of the key areas where it's been my experience that many leaders know how to pretend that they are a duck on water and underneath, they are
Yeah.
really frustrated or upset. And so that's part of the work that we do is like not to just look like you are just
Right.
nodding your head and
Yeah.
thinking, ah, in the inside, but to actually be able to be that presence. Big deal to be able to do that. The
Yeah.
third one, which is your second one, is responsibility, which is own your impact. Every person leaves a relational footprint through, and then everything you list out there is basically a behavior, which is the physicality, the behavior of it. Um, Communication, your reactions, your emotional pace, your tone, your communication habits, all of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when you put all those together, one out of whack, if you will, can mess up all the rest of them. So learning to respond quickly. Oh, that's loosening up. Let's tighten it. That one's off. Let's adjust it. You got to constantly be in response mode. And if you wait till reaction mode, you're probably going to already be in crisis. So I'm not a big fan of that fake it till you make it thing. I think you need to own it till you get it.
I like that. Own it till you get it. It's interesting because I'm still kind of thinking through that. So let's think through this. Own it till you get it. I think there's a Cary Grant quote that says, I pretended to be him until I became him or he became me.
Ah,
So I think there's value in saying, okay, I'm in a room full of all these West Point women. I belong here. I'm gonna fake it, which is, I think what you said, own it. I like that better. Own it.
yeah. Yeah, and you know what I think?
I like that.
People that are following a good leader respect that leader when they say, I really don't have this part figured out. Or I had the best intent for the team and I made a poor choice or poor decision. So I'm willing to now take the time and fix this or figure it out. And I'm telling you, that creates a culture that people will follow you wherever you go. Some people, before they admit it, they'll drive the thing off of a cliff before they would admit they're wrong.
Right. And that's
And
interesting.
everybody else is going to jump off the bus.
Right, 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 right. Well, that's interesting because I'm thinking own it, which is an identity, and then
Mhm.
and then you said own it, including the mistakes and still know your identity. Like own it
Right.
all. Own
That's
it
right.
until you get it.
Own it.
I'm stealing that from you.
Go for it. Go for it. Write a book on it. Own it.
I am. Okay, so we're going to open this up. We have a couple of questions that have come in, but before we do that, I want to make sure that we have enough time for you to answer this one last question. So we talk about being a healthy leader, and it's interesting because there's a Latin root, salus, which is health, and very often, and part of that meaning is security, which from
Yeah.
insecurity, security. And so when we feel secure in ourselves and our own identity, we are being healthy leaders. So I think that our work is 100% in alignment. So my question for you is kind of full circle here. When I said, where are you in your life? And you said your first role was as Pops. Um, where else and how else are you being a healthy leader in your own life right now, in addition to Pops, right? So not the methodology and not the work, but mentally, emotionally, and then also physically. What does that look like for you to be a healthy leader?
Yeah, well, I think I'm at a point in my life as well where I'm looking at, I don't know if you've ever read the books on the 4 quarters of your life, whatever. Unfortunately, I'm probably fourth quarter now.
Yeah.
So where do I want to make the impact? And to do that, I've decided to make some strategic changes on some of the things that I did in the first 3 quarters. So now I'm being a little bit more strategic about who I work with,
Mm,
what I spend my time on, And I'm a big get up early in the morning. I love my coffee, my quiet time. I usually get more done before my team ever even shows up.
Mhm.
And then I spend time, with my wife or go do things, go on a walk, listen to a good podcast. And then I love to just listen while I'm walking and then put some mental notes to come back in and begin to if I listen to a podcast for an hour while I'm walking, I'm almost running at the end because I need to get back and go do what I just heard.
We have the same in front. Yes.
Yeah. Or either I'm too slow because I got to stop and get my notes open on my phone and tell it stuff. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I heard is you take time for yourself first and foremost for your relationship with yourself, perhaps a higher power in your.
Yes. Well, I'm faith-based. So when I do that, I believe there needs to be I would add spiritual into that and emotional, physical, all of those things. So it just matters. And, you know, I think that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me see. We've got a few minutes here. Let me ask you a few questions from some of our healthy leaders. We have one from Beth who says that she was just promoted into her first leadership role. I am an excellent clinician. People trust my expertise, but now I'm leading a team and I feel completely out of my depth. I know I can do this, but I'm surprised by how much I feel like a fraud. Is that normal? And what do I do with it?
Kind of goes back to the imposter syndrome we talked about. And I would make a statement, Beth, think about it this way. There's a difference in saying or feeling you can't do something and admitting you don't know how to do something. So can't's pretty limiting. So I would almost say, is it really true you can't do that? Is that really true? It's probably that you need to identify that you've hit a lid, and that lid is just waiting for somebody to break it, get through there and find out what is it, and just tell yourself, I can do this. I just don't know how yet. Or I will do this. I've just got to find out where I need to go to get that. And I'll finish this statement. Beth, feeling like a fraud is normal for a leader. As a matter of fact, if you're not feeling like a fraud, you've probably gotten too comfortable in the level you're on. So
Yeah, and
I hope I'm always in another room where I feel like I'm the least person that should be there and I'm planning to grow in it.
and that last statement, and I'm planning to grow in it, I think is
Right.
the differentiator. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I want to find out what they're doing. And hey, they're going to teach me something here.
I like the language differentiation going back to those leadership skills, right? The cognitive ability, your mental ability to, and when you catch yourself saying, I can't, or I feel like a fraud, to
Yeah.
cut that out and use the
Right.
language that Rodney just gave, right? I don't know how
Yeah.
to do it yet.
That's right. That's right. But I will find out.
I will find out. I like that one too. I will do this. I will.
You
Very
know,
few.
if I were coaching Beth, I would say, so Beth, let me find out first, what is it that you feel you need to work on?
Mhm.
Second, where can you go to learn how to do that? Who can you go and talk to that would help you with that? And then last, how do you think it would make you feel when you accomplish it?
Love that one.
Yeah.
That's my favorite because that goes to the second leadership skill, which is if you are tapping into that, if you're saying, "Oh, wait, how would you feel?" You're literally using a different part of your brain.
Yeah.
And now I even felt a little bit of a hope, like, oh, for her on her behalf, like it literally
Yeah.
changed the energy in your body. Then you're more likely to go to the what, where, and the who and figure that stuff out. Now
Mhm.
you're in your prefrontal cortex.
Yeah. There you go. Love
Okay.
it.
This one I chose from Mark. Um, this is common. I lead a high performing team and I am exhausted. I look composed in every meeting. I never let other people see me struggle, but privately I am running on empty. I do not know how long I can keep performing this way. Where do I start? That's more.
Well, going back to what we said earlier, I would really dig into your EQ, your emotional intelligence. And so let me make a statement here. There's a difference in stress and burnout. I call them cousins. They're close. They're similar in some things, but very opposite and different. Stress is you make statements like, I've just got too much on my plate. I just can't do it. It's just overwhelming. I got too many things. Burnout is kind of the opposite. It's typically saying something like, I just don't have enough. I can't do this. I don't have the ability to do this. And we do it long enough, we begin to believe it.
Mm,
And the thing that we're doing becomes so emotionally weighty to us, we can't go. We just can't do it. It can't get up anymore. And so if I said, how do you kind of overcome that? And what do you do? I would probably say lean into the tasks or projects where you feel the most energized.
Hmm.
Start right there and get those done and begin to really get the energy back and figure out what kind of works from that. And if you start doing that even on your private life, we often bring our private life into our professional life and think they're the same, and they're not as far as the way we have to perform, but they do affect each other greatly.
Hmm. That's interesting because I like that you added that because I was thinking that's a great professional answer in terms of, okay, make sure that you're leaning into where you find your energy, right? Figure out what your imprint is and lean into that. And then on the personal side, I would also just add to this literally what you said in terms of what it's like for you, Rodney, to be a healthy leader is to actually take time
Yeah,
for yourself,
right.
for your personal your private relationship with yourself, to go take time, whether it's to work out in the gym or to meditate or to pray, or even if
Yeah,
it's just a few little moments in between
yes.
within the day. And I have different clients who, have an alarm go off at certain times, and no matter
Mhm.
what they're doing, they just push themselves away from their desk. They turn to
Yes.
the side, and they're just breathing and remembering that they are not what they're doing. That's not who they are. That's not their
Learn to build margin or rhythms and
rhythms.
change. Yes.
Yes, yeah, and the little segue to that is I love that idea of a rhythm, right? Because we are humans who like uh what am I thinking? Routines. Like we like
Yeah.
routine, but those routines that have rhythms that are based in your self-leadership principles also then almost become rituals, which means they
Yeah.
have strong meaning to
I'm
you.
a 45 to 60 minute project oriented person. After 45 to 60 minutes, I've got to do something different. Even if it's for 10 minutes, then I can come back and I'm good for another loop.
I'm like that too. I like that. I was going to ask you if you had to just like you just set it down and you went to a different project, but you just need to take a little bit of
I,
time.
we don't have time, I know, but I call it POP, personal optimization performance. Personal optimization performance. And yours may be different. Mine is 45 minutes, 15-minute change, 45 minutes, 15-minute change. And that's my rhythm that works really well.
Right? And you stick to it.
Yeah, that's right.
While
Because I've
you're
got
ready.
these three things I got to get done. So I have three cycles I've got to do.
I love that. I love that. That's
Yeah.
totally in alignment with the way that we talk about blocking time and then
Yeah.
boxing the
There you
time.
go.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So I know that we have a couple more questions, but we are at the top of the hour. So Rodney, I cannot thank you enough. This
Thank
conversation
you.
delivered exactly what I knew it would, but and then some. And the work that you've put into this book is just evident on every page. And I think that we are going to be sitting with this for a while. And before we close out, I know that you have a generous gift for our audience. If you would like to share what that is.
Sure. So you can purchase the book on Amazon. I think you'll have that link in the notes.
Mhm.
And what we're going to do, and I don't know how long this will last, so I can't promise this will be in perpetuity, but at least for a while, if you buy the book, if you'll take a picture of yourself holding the book, put it on social media, you can tag me, you can find Connexus Group, or you can find Rodney Agan Leadership, you can find me on LinkedIn. If you'll just post a picture of you doing that and then leave a review on Amazon, you can then send us an email office at theconnexusgroup.com, and we're going to send you a free complimentary personality imprint assessment, and that's a $79 value within itself. So,
Big deal. Big deal. So everybody listening, definitely take advantage of that. I took it a long time ago. Maybe I'll take advantage of it too.
yeah, there you go. I
Yes.
think we might can figure out how to get you one. I think we
Thank
can work with the right people.
you. Thank you again,
Thank you.
Rodney. Really, really just super, super valuable. So, for the rest of you guys on here, if this resonated with you, I would love to have you inside the Healthy Leader Inner Circle where we practice this type of work with these types of leaders every month. You can find out more on the healthyleadergroup.com. And if you know a leader who needs to hear this, specifically a leader from insecurity to identity, then please share this episode with them. The best way to spread healthy leadership is one conversation at a time. So, thank you again, everyone, for being here and for daring to do the work and to be the work. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you.